Gold has served the role, the function of being money for thousands of years. This is because gold has characteristics that make it perform and function better as money than all of its competitors. The difficulty in mining gold, getting it out of the ground, meant the supply was limited, kept inflation in check. Its easily recognizable color, its heavy weight, and its malleability meant that it was very difficult to counterfeit. The relative scarcity of gold meant that you could store a large amount of wealth in a very small space. And finally, the fact that it is impervious to corrosion, to rust, to decay, to rot, meant that you could store your wealth in gold forever without ever worrying about time ruining your wealth. But obviously, over the last couple of hundred years, things changed. People slowly started using paper as money instead of gold, and then in 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, he ended all traces of a gold standard permanently. Now, at the time, Nixon said this was a temporary suspension, but as we all know, there is nothing as permanent as a temporary government program. Now, since then, we've had many financial problems. There have been more episodes of hyperinflation since then than there ever were before that. We have ballooning government deficits all around the world. We have skyrocketing, unsustainable national debts all around the world. We've got funding for endless wars. We have a historic rise in inequality as fiat money enriches the top through inflation by slowly stealing from the poor. So this begs the question, if gold was so good and fiat is so bad, why did the change ever happen in the first place? It all comes down to one giant problem with money: trust. First, I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor, I Trust Capital. Today, people are concerned about the purchasing power of their dollars being eroded due to inflation. They're concerned about the returns they're getting on their traditional portfolios, things like stocks and bonds. Many people want to be able to purchase investments that will preserve their purchasing power, things like gold, silver, Bitcoin, ways to store the value of your money without being exposed to the dollar. What's the problem with this? The problem is that most people have most of their wealth in their 401ks, their employer's retirement accounts. And these accounts do not allow people to buy gold, silver, or Bitcoin. Some of them allow access to ETFs that have exposure to these prices. But number one, you're introducing many layers of counterparty risk. And number two, you don't actually own the asset itself. That's where I Trust Capital comes in. I Trust Capital allows you to open up actual retirement accounts, IRAs, traditional and Roth. You can even roll over funds from a previous employer's retirement account to fund this. You can buy gold, you can buy silver, you can buy Bitcoin and even other cryptocurrencies with I Trust Capital. And if you sign up with my link in the description below, you'll get $100 worth of Bitcoin as a sign-up bonus for opening the account. The issue of trust is at the heart of all monetary systems. Take, for example, our current fiat monetary system. Fiat money, dollars, pounds, euros, yen, this is all just ledger money. A ledger is a list that is held at your bank, and it's just a spreadsheet of all of the account numbers and how much money is in each one of those account numbers, and also a record of all the transactions that got that money into that account in the first place. That's literally all money is. It's just a bunch of digital lists held at a bunch of different financial institutions. You can see here why trust would be such a big issue, because you trust that your bank won't just delete all your money with a few keystrokes. You trust that your bank won't lock you out from doing business with them simply because they don't like the type of business activity you're engaged in. And no, this is not fiction. In 2021, OnlyFans was banned from using banks because the banks didn't agree with their business. This happens at a large scale too, as Russia has found out over the last year. as the United States has cut off their ability to use their dollars. You also have to trust that those dollars themselves will retain their purchasing power, because if the central bank decides to create more dollars by printing, then those new dollars will suck purchasing power away from all the previously existing dollars, and the symptom that everybody recognizes will be inflation. Prices will go up. The actual problem is those dollars are losing value because the supply of them is going up. So with fiat, you have to trust that you won't lose access to that fiat, and you also have to trust that you won't lose purchasing power with that fiat. And we can clearly see that this trust is abused all the time, which makes it seem crazy that the world would have ever moved to a system with so much potential for so much abuse of trust. The issue is that, unfortunately, a gold standard requires a large amount of trust as well. So let's go back to the time when people used gold coins as money. You might on the surface look at this and think, well, that is a trustless monetary system. No need for trust because you're physically holding the gold. But how do you know it's actually gold? More importantly than that, because it's pretty easy to recognize on the surface whether it's gold, how do you know that it is all gold? Yes, it is true that gold maintained its position as the dominant form of money for thousands of years because of its difficulty in counterfeiting, but it is not impossible, and people for all of history have been trying to do that. As far as we know, the first concrete example of fake gold coins is from around 600 BC. These were coins that were diluted. They were made with gold plus other metals. But we know governments as far back as the Romans were doing this on purpose in order to extend their purchasing power. Very simply, with gold, you can either make the coins imperceptibly smaller and then use that additional gold to make more coins, which means you're inflating the total money supply, or you mix in other metals with the gold so that people don't notice there's other gold mixed in, but then again, you still have more gold left over to make more gold coins. It's just another way to inflate the total supply of money to give yourself more purchasing power, which then causes prices to go up down the road. And this is not a practice that ever stopped. In fact, it is still happening today. In 2020, it was found out that there was $2 billion worth of loans backed by fake gold in China. This was 83 tons of gold that was being used as collateral that was actually just copper covered in a very thin layer of gold. And on March 6th of this year, 2023, the news broke that Australia's Perth Mint had been selling diluted gold. So far, we know of $9 billion worth of recalls that they have been over diluting their gold with silver since at least 2018. So as you can clearly see, even with physical gold, trust is at the foundation still. Luckily, there is a solution to trust, which is verification, which is how these scams were found out, because somebody decided to verify that all the gold that the person said was there was actually there, and they found out it actually wasn't. But as you may already know, verifying gold content is cost and time prohibitive for average people, especially for everyday transactions. And so while people did used to use gold coins for all of their daily transactions, eventually people started outsourcing their verification of the gold. It just made more sense to trust a third party to hold and verify the gold for everybody. And then instead of reintroducing trust back into the exchange by taking that verified gold and spending it, and then that same piece of gold has to continually get re-verified, no, you just leave it with the trusted third party, and instead you exchange ownership of that gold. Banking was born. Paper gold certificates started being traded as money, and the first seeds of the fiat monetary system was planted. So why did it not just stop there, and why did it evolve into the fiat system and a collapse of the gold standard? Well, again, because of the age-old trade-off between trust and verification. Because sure, I don't have to verify gold content in a daily transaction, but now we've just pushed back that problem of trust to trusting that that third party has all the gold that they say they do. And as history has told many times, this trust was abused, and then it scaled up from banks to central banks. And then that trust was abused and it got scaled up at Bretton Woods when the Fed became the central bank for all the banks. And then it was abused again and another bank run happened and all the world went to go get their gold from America and the gold window was closed. The last trace of a gold standard became a part of history. So in 1971, money became not backed by something that you could verify, but fully backed just by trust, aka full faith and credit. Now, at this point, there's a lot of you who are probably thinking Bitcoin, the first monetary technology that requires zero trust. But why do people say that Bitcoin doesn't require trust? Because it relies on verification, and verification is always costly. Whether you're verifying Bitcoin by running a full node or you're verifying gold by testing the contents of the gold, verification, there's always a cost with it. And if you take the cheaper, more convenient route with Bitcoin where you do not verify, you still then have to trust the third party. And if history is any guide, for some reason, for one reason or another, humanity always collectively chooses trust over verification, which means that systemically, as a large scale system, it may not be possible to ever get past that hump and fully engage with a system that relies purely on verification because humanity, for whatever reason, just always tends towards trust. But luckily, as individuals, you might be able to avoid that problem altogether by just living in both worlds. Split your money into two categories: saving and spending. For spending, trust. For saving, verify. It is just too costly, regardless of your preferred form of money, whether it's dollars, Bitcoin, or gold, to rely on full verification for your spending money, your daily, weekly, monthly transactions. It is cost and time prohibitive. But with the money that you save, relying on trust could actually be more costly than verification. If you trust that your government won't inflate away your purchasing power, you lose your savings to inflation. If you trust without verification that you're buying gold, well, you might accidentally be storing your wealth in copper. And if you trust without verification for Bitcoin, you might wind up having your Bitcoin commingled and Sam Bankman-Fried decides to spend it on some political donations. So the jury is still out on whether humanity will ever be able to cross that chasm of figuring out the perfect trade-off between trust and verification. But luckily, as individuals, we don't have to worry about that because we can live with one foot in both worlds. It's not trust or verify, it's trust and verify. And finally, if you'd like more of my long form training on investing, fundamental analysis, options, trading, and more, check out Heresy Financial University linked in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.